but I knew it was the wheels had already been set in motion. And, shortly after I signed the contract, I realized that it was probably not the right decision. It was based on the practice manager, it had nothing to do with the partners in the practice. But then you just have to make the best of, whatever decision you made.
There are times in our lives that change the way we see the world. Navigating these challenges can take insight, trusted confidants, or even a coach. Let's explore those moments. In this companion podcast to RX for Success, we will discover ways to learn and write our own success stories together. I'm Dr. Dale Waxman, a physician coach with MD Coaches, and this is Life-Changing Moments. Today's guest is Dr. Sheila Kilbane. Sheila is a pediatrician who also trained in integrative medicine and practices in Charlotte, North Carolina. She is also the best-selling author of Healthy Kids, Happy Moms. Her inspirational and entertaining path into medicine story is chronicled in RX for Success episode number 151, which you can access on the RX for Success podcast website or in your podcast app. Now, during that show, Dr. Kilbane mentioned the word gut a few times, and I wanted to bring her back to explore this some more, specifically the concept of trust your gut, which she offered as her first prescription for success. We'll get into that more in a moment, but for now, I've known Sheila for many years as our paths crossed frequently around areas of mutual professional interest. And it is a delight to have this opportunity to explore some of her life lessons a bit deeper. So Sheila, welcome to Life-Changing Moments.
Thank you. I'm so happy. And for the listeners, Dal is one of the most amazing individuals on the planet. We all love to be with him. And you were attending when I was a resident, and it was always my favorite thing to see you. Oh, so thank you for having me.
Thank you. I think this could be a mutual admiration session too. But it goes in the other direction as well. So
we'll save that for a glass of wine later.
We'll do that. We'll definitely. So Sheila, for those who were not able to listen to your really great story about your path into where, all the way to what you're doing now on RX for Success, can you just, not so much the recurrence of that path, but what's your situation right now professionally?
Yeah, so I am an integrative pediatrician, and my practice is in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's called Infinite Health, and I do all integrative medicine. So I see the kids who are doing what conventional medicine has recommended and, what conventional medicine has to offer, and they're still struggling. So it's kids with eczema, asthma, a lot of gut issues, anything. It runs the gamut. And we work with the gut microbiome. We do blood work. We use supplements. We use medications, right? It's just really, we get to combine the best of both conventional and integrative medicine and just watch them transform.
Yeah. And, the other piece about that's your sort of face-to-face practice, but you also have an online presence as well, and you do some educational work with people all over the world.
Yes, I have an online course, and it walks people through the same process that we use in the practice. We just do it online, and I get online once a month, and I do an open office hours call with the families on that course. And then my book, which came out September of 2021, and it's just the process written out in book form. So it's kind of the DIY form, which it's great for families, and it's also great for other practitioners if you're interested in integrative medicine. Because it's called, the title is Healthy Kids, Happy Moms, 7 Steps to Heal and Prevent Common Childhood Illnesses, but it's applicable to everyone. I'm a pediatrician, so I had to, gear it toward kids.
Right. Great. Well, that's awesome. Some of the wisdom that I know that you impart to patients and their family members has to do with some of the things that you personally have experienced. And so getting to what I wanted to bring you back for, this whole concept of, and by the way, you said gut again twice more just now. So there's a focus for you there, isn't there?
If you either have a cup of tea or a glass of wine while you're watching this, you'll have to drink every time I say gut.
It's a drinking game. Okay, awesome. So what I'd like to do, so let's talk about that, because I really keyed in on that. And what I want to do is replay a piece from that first podcast. Here is what was the first prescription for success that you had.
And this is what I mentioned earlier, is that my prescription for success is follow your gut as much as you can, right? And sometimes we veer away from it. And what I like to call it, it's when we lose our shoes. But when that happens, just getting back to that place where you're able to listen to your intuition. And that always means getting quiet.
So I know you said more there, but there's so much in there. Just in those 25 seconds or so, there are three things that I picked up on that I'd like us to kind of explore a little bit. So one is this, trust your gut, lose your shoes, and then get quiet. So I wonder if can we take each of those one at a time? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what do you mean by trust your gut?
So it's one of my favorite things to say in the practice is in medical school, we learn about the gut as the little brain in the gut. When you have a physical sensation about things, we sometimes ignore it. And if we can really listen to that, that's when we make the best decisions. And there's a lot written on this in terms of books of how we make decisions. And one of the books, I can't even remember, it's either Click or something, where they talk about thin slicing. Like, we will make these snap decisions, but we can't always articulate why we're saying what we're saying. The story, I'm veering a little bit, but I think this is super interesting. What they talked about is this was out in California at one of the museums. They had, a painting had turned up and they thought it was a Michelangelo. And they had it, they'd done all the carbon dating and it was looking like it was. And then the expert flew in from Italy, and the moment they saw it, they said it's a fake. And how do you explain? And then they ended up being correct, but how do you explain that? And so that's one of the things that I think it is when we trust our gut is, and for me, right, it's the sensation, and it's also, we can't always explain it. And one of the things, so when I quit my conventional medicine practice, I will always forget this. I didn't tell a lot of people because I didn't want to have that. If people, I wasn't listening to input. I had made my decision. And I had that conviction. I knew that if I started to bring reason into it, I might not make the decision that I knew I needed to make. I don't know why. I think my family, my parents were very big, especially my dad and I don't even know if he would term it, you follow your gut, but he always used to say, no guts, no glory. But it was very much do that intuition thing. And it may not always be the most popular thing. Mm-hmm. And right, that's something that in medicine can be really hard to go against the grain.
So there's a little bit of sort of this sense of intuition. You've also mentioned a sense of body sensation, and you've also mentioned this differentiating it from reason.
All right, here's another good example of this. So after I quit my job, that's when I told my friends. And one of my good friends, her husband, who's also my friend, he's an orthopedic surgeon. And we all trained together, and he called me and he was like, Kilbane, I just worried about you. I just don't know. I just don't, have you really thought through what you're going to do? Yada, yada, yada. And literally a week ago, we had the conversation, we were talking, and he was like, well, I'm really glad I gave you such good advice back then. He's like, I'm the one eating my words now. But right, other people can't see it. And at that point in my career, I would get really tired. I would come, right, I knew I was starting to physically get sick. I would go home and I couldn't get off the couch because it was the wrong fit for my system. And people could rationalize, right? And I could say, this is not the right thing. I have a great job. Why, who in their right mind would leave the job that I had? But it just wasn't the right fit for me, right? And I look at it now and I look at the kids that I've been able to help and how I'm just a different person than I was then.
Yeah.
And it was a better way for me to do it.
Right. I want to drop back to something that you said, that this person who was coming from a good place in his heart, that sometimes when we open ourselves up to, and I think you in a gut way knew, I don't really want to entertain other people's ideas about this because I already know this is the right thing for me to do. When other people are giving us their perspective, we have to remember it's coming through their own filters. So it may not be the decision he would have made for his career. But he may not have been coming from what's best for Sheila, because he may not have been listening well to what was important to you. And not to diminish him, but we all do that, right? We all, for people we care about, we tend to impart our own sort of wishes on those people based on what we think is successful.
For sure. The other thing too is, well, I know this now. I didn't know it then in my life, but I had worked with a friend of ours. I think you may know her, Sheila Mullen, and she had just gone through some coaching herself. And one of the things that she said to me is, when somebody says something that triggers you, you need to pay attention to that. And what he said didn't trigger me because it wasn't even rolled right off my back. Because I think that's the other thing that we get hung up on is, I can't believe they would say that, yada, yada, yada. So it's, if you are getting caught up in some kind of a loop because of what somebody said to you, it may be an opportunity to just take a deeper look. And why is that unsettling you so much?
Today's episode is brought to you by Doc-to-Doc Lending. Doc-to-Doc provides match day loans of up to $25,000 to fourth-year medical students and current residents. These loans are designed to help students cover personal expenses, such as moving costs, housing down payments, and living expenses before and during residency. With fixed interest rates, flexible repayment terms, and no prepayment penalties, Doc-to-Doc Match Day loans provide financial flexibility and allow students to focus on their exciting journey towards becoming a physician. Doc-to-Doc was founded for doctors by doctors. They understand the challenges and hard work involved in becoming a doctor, and they support doctors throughout their careers. Using their in-house lending platform, Doc-to-Doc considers the unique financial considerations of doctors that are not typically considered by traditional financial institutions. So don't let financial stress hold you back from achieving your goals. Doc-to-Doc Lending has you covered. Visit www.doctodoclending.com/MDcoaches to learn more.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians, for physicians, to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview.
Going back to sort of body sensation, I think one of the things you said, even talked about this clinically, when you talk to patients about they may have suppressed or may not be paying attention to even some symptoms that they're having. And so is there a way to translate that to this trusting your gut for what's right for us in our life? Are there some things that we may be ignoring in ourselves, and even physical sensations?
Yes. As I do this with the moms in my practice, is we'll kind of talk about, the first thing I'll say to them is, what do you love to do? What's your way to de-stress? Right? And it's either, walking or running or maybe getting out with friends. And if they're not doing any of that, we talk through that. For me, it's sort of like that flow, right? For me, it's like a whole body sensation that I'm 100% focused on whatever I'm doing, and you feel physically good and you have that clarity, right? We all know what it's like to not follow our gut, because that's the only time you ever run into that kind of regret or the punch in the gut thing of, why is this happening? And then you go back and you say, I shouldn't, I knew when I was making the decision that I should have made a different decision. Mm-hmm. And that has happened to me along this journey as well.
Sure.
And after I'd quit my first job, I had signed a contract with another, wonderful, wonderful group. But I knew it was, the wheels had already been set in motion. And, shortly after I signed the contract, I realized that it was probably not the right decision. It was based on the practice manager, had nothing to do with the partners in the practice. But then you just have to make the best of, whatever decision you made.
Yeah.
But that's, for me, it's getting quiet and it's writing. I'm better at it now, maybe. I guess, or maybe understanding my process.
Yeah, you mentioned lose your shoes. What do you mean by that? Is that kind of what we're talking about right now?
Yeah. So when I say that, I get one of my friends would talk about this with his daughter, and he's Colombian, and he would say, "Oh no, she lost her shoes," meaning she kind of got off the rail, not doing the things that are maybe good for her. And now when I'm losing my shoes, it's when I'm staying up too late on the computer, not taking care of myself, not doing, maybe not doing enough things outside. And because you can get caught up in that. And that's where, like, for me, especially as an entrepreneur and having my own practice, it's easy to go down that path of work, work, work. And that's not, that, sometimes when you're inspired, that's good, but it's not what's really going to bring you that long-term enjoyment and happiness.
When you start noticing that you are doing certain things, that's okay, I've lost my shoes here. I'm not following my path. I'm not in that place of following my gut. Am I getting that?
Yes. Yeah.
So for everybody, that's a little bit different. And so I'll invite listeners to think, what is that signal for you that says that you're off your path, or off, even temporarily off your path? So you then said what you do is you get yourself quiet.
And it's also, if I'm out of that state of gratitude, or if I'm like poking apart, the ladies who I work with, or if I keep looking at all the negative things and I'm not, what a friend of mine likes to say it is, are you making decisions from the field? Which is meaning, from when you're in a place of balance. So that is when I get quiet and I'll go walk barefooted. There's a little, you probably know where it is, Avondale. There's like a little church that has a labyrinth near my office. And I'll go and I'll take my shoes off and I'll walk around there. And I have to get myself back to that place and really smiling and remembering this is life, that whatever it is that I'm getting so out of sorts about, does it really make a big difference in the overall scheme of things? Like right now, we're doing a big supplement sale, and I got myself all tied up around the emails and when they went out and I was like, really, Sheila, calm down. It's all gonna, right? You're gonna sell supplements. It doesn't, what the emails say, it's gonna be fine. So it's just, I'm much quicker to get back. And then I have my touch points of people who I've worked with over the years, who I might go do a couple of sessions with. And then that will help me, whether it's a counselor or whoever it is.
So you're quicker to observe in yourself, I'm a little off track. And then you've already developed a pocket full of tools to get quiet and get yourself back to you.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool.
Well, I love to say that it works 100% all
Sure.
the time.
Well, it actually kind of leads to my next question. And you've talked a little bit about dropping into your gut, if you will, reactively, like when you're off track. What do you do proactively?
So one of the cool things that I will tell you I do, and your listeners might think I am a little bit cray-cray. I don't see a high volume of patients, but I read the charts the day before. I mean, we spend Mondays getting ready, but then, I'll go through them again, and I literally write their names down in my journal, and I meditate and just kind of connect so that I'm allowing my gut into this healing relationship, so that when I'm making decisions, and it's like magic. It doesn't mean everything is perfect with the child. It doesn't mean, right, that there aren't bumps in the road. It's just because I'm connecting with them on a different level, and it's the best thing ever. And so and now I do it all the time. I would have periods where I would get tired and I wouldn't do it. And because we also always have those patients that you see their name on your schedule and you go, oh, like your whole body tenses up. Those are the ones that I particularly do it even more for, because they're the reality. If you believe in the way that I do, is we're all one. And I literally think about it in terms of electrons, protons, and neutrons. And we're more space, and we're just this mass of breathing, right? The planet and all of us, of these breathing, moving particles. And it's taking our ego and that conscious, if we go to the subconscious place, it always feels like a more pure connection with the kids and with the families.
Oh, that's really neat. What a lovely image I have of you doing that. And I would imagine that, I'm hearing the benefit that confers to you as well as for them. That's very cool, Sheila. I didn't know that that's something that you did. That's pretty awesome.
Yes. And like when I switched into integrative medicine, it just brought my joy, because I always wanted to be a physician. There was never anything else. But I was miserable. And, this is a much later iteration of how I practice. But, and who helped me so much with this is Bridget Bungard. So she did integrative medicine up at one of the hospitals in Charlotte. And one day she said to me, Sheila, you treat the whole family. You treat the parents as well. And it was just the way, it was like she gave me permission to have a deeper conversation with the parents.
Neat.
And what I say now to the parents is that it's my job to help you get your child out of crisis mode. And then we get to start talking about how do you begin having fun again, right? And living your best life. Because that's the number one thing you can do for a kid is to be your best self.
Yeah. If the parents are doing well, the kid does well. Yeah, absolutely. You've already kind of mentioned this earlier, and I think it's related to this sense of self, this sense of when I'm kind of off my path, the idea that I've lost my shoes, and then what do I do to kind of get quiet and get myself back there, both reactively and proactively. In a related way, you mentioned in the podcast with Randy that, and you mentioned a little bit here, that your nervous system wasn't designed for that conventional pediatric practice that you first entered upon leaving residency. I just wonder if you can say more about that, because I think some listeners may be able to relate to that. What do you mean? What did you mean by that?
So I think a lot about the way that our nervous systems are put together. And I'm very impacted by my external environment, right? If I get cold, I cannot think. So if I'm in a freezing cold office in the summertime, if there aren't many windows, if I can't get outside, I'm just going to feel like a caged rat. And we are not great at designing offices that are very healing. My first office out of residency, I was in like the back corner of an office and 0 windows. So that's one thing. And then just another example. So right out of residency, you acquire your patients or your partner's patients, right? If they have a sick visit, the kids have a sick visit and the partner is busy, they'll come and see the new doctor for a sick visit. So then I would see these kids, and the way medical charts are, at least back then it was paper, you would have to flip through this really thick chart to figure out what was going on. I'm like, this is insanity. How do I know when I'm going to refer you to get ear tubes if I can't even see how many times you've been diagnosed with an ear infection? So I and this is also, my personality, right? Is I'm going to, if it's not making sense, I'm going to change the system. So I created this little, visit encounter sheet, and I would write their main problems, their allergies, which EMRs have this now. And then I would write the date, what the diagnosis was and what treatment they had. So I was able to, at a glance, I was able to get a much better idea of what I needed to do. And in doing this, I started to see how many antibiotics these kids were on. And I'm like, this is not good. And that's part of what led me to start looking and reading more about allergies, environmental allergies, food allergies, and just going, wait a minute, this kid had gastroenteritis, then he had strep, then he had pneumonia, then he had a sinusitis. It's just what's going on? Why are these? So I felt like we were expected to be making decisions and we didn't have all the information, right, with a 10 or 15 minute visit. And, once you get to know the patients, that's a different story. But I was staying late at night to get the charting done and to get it ready so that I was able to better understand what was going on with patients. And I think that's just the way my mind has to understand the whole picture. Even if I'm just having to make, a small decision about an ear infection, I want to know what's going on. So that's one thing. And it's also, right, like sensory. So there are some people, and I think Ayurveda explains this well, right? Ayurveda is the ancient form of medicine that they practice in India. And they have they break everyone down into 3 different doshas. And you and I were saying, I know you do a lot of work with the Enneagram, and I think there are different ways to do this, but the doshas are, right, Pitta, Kapha, and Vata. And it just is how you metabolize information, how you metabolize food, how are you when you're off balance? And I understand myself, and right, I have a sensitive GI system. I'm more of the Vata personality, which is more airy. So I need to be grounded. It also plays a role in what kinds of foods that you eat. Then there are other people like the Vata people who, they've got guts of steel. They have, get up at the same time every morning, boom, boom, boom. They can get their to-do list up right in the morning. For me, I've got to have or if I have to sit down and write a blog or something, I have to have slept well, the lighting has to be perfect. I have to have the right amount of caffeine in my system. It will be phenomenal when I write it. My brain isn't going to access that information like that. Like when I was writing my book, it was such a fun process, but I pretty much was a hermit because I couldn't, I knew if I had something that needed to come, I had to walk in the woods, and I couldn't start listening to a book or a podcast or anything because it would interrupt the creative process. I think the creative process is all part and parcel to this, to our gut intuition and to what we're doing. And I think we don't recognize the things that we do that are creative, whether you're a car mechanic, a hairdresser, right, a physician, and you're doing all of these things now, right? You prepared, you took a lot of notes, and then you, I'm sure, were still and quiet so that you were able to pick out that pattern of, right? I talked about my gut the whole time.
What I'm hearing, Sheila, is this, what's coming up for me as you're talking is the attention that you bring to yourself around self-awareness. My last guest, we talked about sort of physician heal thyself. You are physician know thyself, and know what makes me tick, what do I need for me to be the best me possible. And I realize that you will never get it all right. It's a process of learning. But if I had to put a theme to all of this, is you put a lot of investment into noticing and then making decisions based on what you notice about what's best for you, for how you operate, for how you bring your best self forward.
It is. And now that you say that, part of that was so much of the entrepreneurial stuff. Have gone to so many entrepreneur conferences, and they talk about that, right? Because if you just have this blank slate, in many ways, it's easier to fit into a system because you don't have to make as many decisions, right? You do this, everything is set up. I had to do everything from pick my EMR to create the structure of my practice to hire people. And I didn't have any kind of training or anything with that. And so one of the things, this is just another small example of, at all these conferences, they just talk about, can you get somebody to help you with food or have somebody make your food? Make sure that you're getting your house cleaned, make sure that so there are things, and I've had it, all of that stuff I put into place very quickly, right? I've had somebody making me food for many, many years. I do yoga. The world could be falling down around me, and I go to yoga religiously 2 to 3 times a week, right? Hot, sweaty yoga, because I don't function without it. And it's not for me, that's not a chore. For some people, sitting down to do the work that's really hard for me, that might be super easy. Whereas for me, eating healthy and exercising that's done. And so I think I've been able to I put the scaffolding in place early on. And so that that frees up a lot of brain space for me to do the things. And Russ Greenfield, right, our dear friend, he modeled saying no so well, with a smile on his face, and you felt like that no was the best thing you'd ever heard. And once I was no longer drowning, I don't schedule myself out a lot. I just don't, because it just I don't function well.
Yeah. You are so attentive to the impact that different choices that you make, different things that happen in your life, and what that has on you, and keeping the focus on yourself being well and all the different dimensions of what being well means, and how much that pays off, not just for you, but for your patients as well. I think it's pretty remarkable. I think you're a great model for all of us, and not just the listeners here, but for other professionals as well.
Oh, well, you are super sweet, because it's also, right, I don't take insurance. And if I'm preaching, you need to eat healthy and do this and this and this. If I look like, I haven't been taking care of myself, I'm not going to be a very good emissary for my mission.
Yeah, that too. Well, thank you so much for this. And I just wanted to, is there anything else kind of that's come up for you in our conversation right now that you think that we ought to impart to listeners, some wisdom that you have gained in this realm of trusting your gut, being quiet, getting yourself back on your path reactively and proactively? Anything else that's come up for you that you'd like to mention?
I think it's just having the imagination. And I think this is where you can look like to Steve Jobs and people like that, who I think sometimes you just can't even fathom. And for a period of time, I couldn't fathom what I knew. I couldn't keep doing what I was doing, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do and how I could get there. And it became more clear. And it was writing. You just never know what's going to come out of your hand when you start writing and not typing on the computer, right? Picking up a pen and paper. Something magical happens when you're actually writing. And I would start to write this stuff out. And I literally wrote, this was probably 2010 or 11. I actually have it in a picture that I use in some of my talks I wrote a picture of a clinic and a smiley face on it. And I wrote, I want to see, my goal at the time was to only see 14 patients a day. I don't see anywhere near that number of patients a day now, but it was to get to spend an hour with them. It couldn't have been 4, it must have been 6 to 8 or something. And that I didn't want to do well visits. I only wanted to do sick visits. And so I just started writing down the things that I liked doing. I love to figure out problems, right? I love to see a kid who's got something undiagnosed and to figure it out. And so that eventually led into my brain kind of creating something of what I did want. And anything is possible. If you had told me 20 years ago I would be doing what I'm doing now, I would have said, you are absolutely crazy. I never, ever could have imagined that I would be able to do medicine in this way.
Yeah, nice to take some risks into unfamiliar territory to explore things, to see what comes up that fits your unique path as well. So thank you for that. And Sheila, thank you for taking time again to join me on this podcast and the MD Coaches podcast family. I really, really appreciate this. I really appreciate that deep dive into what do we mean by trusting our gut, and kind of deconstructing that for people to be able to begin applying that in their own lives. So thank you again.
Thank you, Dale.
I really loved this easygoing conversation with Dr. Kilbane. While it was often lighthearted, Sheila offers some deep wisdom from years of practicing self-awareness and self-knowing. So here are my takeaways from this conversation. Number 1, follow your gut. Pay attention to the physical sensations that occur at various key times in your life, like when you're confronted with an important decision or you're in an environment that just doesn't feel right. Sometimes the sensation is in the gut, and sometimes the whole body. We often ignore these at our peril. Most of us can remember a time when we did not listen to our gut and the unfortunate outcome of doing so. If we do listen to it, many times that is when we make the best decisions. Number 2, learn the signals of when you, quote, lose your shoes, end quote, or you're off your unique path. These may be physical as a result of getting off track health-wise, or they may show up as persistent thoughts like self-criticism or worry. Notice that you're experiencing these, and number 3, get quiet. Employ tools that bring you back to balance. Think about activities that have worked for you in the past or that you're aware of can help you be reflective, such as writing, walking in nature, or meditating. Whatever it is, be intentional about getting quiet with yourself and then listen to your gut. Well, I hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you encounter a time in your life when you're doing one thing, but your gut tells you another, and you wish to sort out what to do next, consider coaching. All of the coaches at MD Coaches have been there, and we're here to listen and provide a space for you to listen deeply to your inner voice. You can reach us at mymdcoaches.com. Thank you for listening, and be well. Thank you for tuning in to Life-Changing Moments. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to rate us 5 stars and leave a review. Doing so helps our podcast reach more listeners. Have something to share? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Visit the MD Coaches community on Facebook groups. This dynamic virtual space is a place to continue discussion about life-changing moments and perhaps share some life-changing moments of your own. Join the conversation today.